Welcome to Alan Skorski Reports. I'm Alan Skorski. For years, anti-Semitism had a safe home on the left. The evil mantle was carried by those proclaiming to be on the side of social justice. The lies and blood libeling of Israel, particularly by Islamists and Palestinianists, were most prevalent on college campuses, whether from university professors or the very organized groups such as Students for Justice in Palestine. For decades, they promoted the lies of apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. And for the most part, the pro-Israel side ignored them, falsely believing that no one was taking them seriously. That was until October 7th, when Palestinianism and Islamism took full control of the narrative from the universities and streets of America throughout Canada, Europe, and Australia. But then a new phenomena coming from an old phenomena came back. Anti-Semitism from the far right, from those bringing back the anti-Semitism from the Hitlerian days, including the protocols of the Elders of Zion. God-fearing Christian Charlie Kirk, who took his message of serving his Lord to college campuses, found himself being challenged by those who were taking quotes from the Gemara, which they called the Talmud, and accusing Charlie of betraying his faith for the Jews. Charlie, who was very learned in religion, ably smacked down these students and sent them off humiliated. Charlie warned supporters of Israel that he was seeing a rise of anti-Semitism from the right that he had never seen before. Then former conservative pundits like Candace, Owens, and Tucker Carlson saw an opening for themselves and jumped on the Israel controls the U.S. government bandwagon, often citing religious quotes and texts. Tucker Carlson himself has interviewed so-called Christians from Bethlehem and Jerusalem to make the case that Israel is harming Christians as just another reason why the U.S. should sever ties with the Middle East's only democracy. Today, I am beyond honored to have Rabbi Tovia Singer to address these lies against Israel and the Jewish people, against those who have abused scriptures or referenced sources that have been discredited. Rabbi Singer lives in Jerusalem and founded Outreach Judaism, the organization devoted to educating and strengthening the Jewish people in the face of aggressive evangelical missionary activity, and is the best-selling author of Let's Get Biblical series. Rabbi Singer, it's an honor to have you on the show, and after many years of hearing about you and following you, I get to finally meet you on Zoom.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you.
So let me do this. I don't want to get, I'm not a very theological person. I'm not a Bucky in Gemara or Chumash. I just, I read what I read and I know what I know. I'm more of a political person.
Right.
But when I hear, and I saw this with Charlie, when he would have his shows, and again, Candace Owens citing her book, The Talmudic Jew, which we know was written by a guy that was very anti-Semitic. And we'll get into some of Tucker's quotes also. But what scares me, because I can argue politics, I can argue history, I can't really argue religion that well. So I know the quote from Bereshit, where God says to Abraham, I think it's Abraham, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Now, I don't know what Rashi explains about that, but I've heard evangelicals say that to me directly, that they're going to bless me because they want to be blessed by God. Tucker says things like, there's no way that God said that about Bibi Netanyahu. So if you would, I'm going to give you the floor now because I had a very big opening monologue, and just hit me with whatever struck you, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So the phenomena of Christian Zionism is rather new. It began in the 19th century, and historically, the church was fiercely anti-Jewish. And when I say the church, I mean both the Roman Catholic Church, the largest Christian denomination, the Orthodox Church, that those two groups split in a schism in 1054, and the reformers of the Protestant movement, all of them were viciously anti-Semitic, which means that the kind of stuff you hear from Nick Fuentes, for example, is not as anti-Semitic as what you would have heard from John Chrysostom, possibly the most important, revered, venerated saint in the Orthodox Church, Augustine, the saint, the most venerated a saint in the Roman Catholic Church. They were viciously anti-Semitic and proponents of replacement theology. The church fathers that preceded Chrysostom, 4th, 5th, same thing with Augustine. I want to just point out one thing for the viewers. Rome takes an enormous change in the 4th century. Constantine, in the fall of 312, converts to Christianity. In the following year, in the Edict of Milan, Christianity becomes a legal or licit religion. Until then, Christianity was a illicit religion, and all the anti-Semitism expressed by the church fathers in what's called anti-Nicene church fathers. Anti-Nicene doesn't mean against Nicaea, but prior to Nicaea, their rhetoric, the rhetoric of Augustine, of Jerome, excuse me, not Jerome, of Justin, of Tertullian, of Irenaeus, of Origen, they all preceded the Edict of Milan. It didn't matter, but they were all expressing one idea, and that is that God had rejected the Jewish people. While the Jews were chosen, in passages you quote in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, but they are no longer chosen. Why? Because the Jewish people committed the unspeakable crime of deicide, which means they not only rejected Jesus, but went about killing him. And the New Testament does portray Pontius Pilate, the authority in the empire over Judea, as specifically the one who carries out the crucifixion. It is the Jews, as far as the Passion narrative, as far as the New Testament is concerned, that urged him to do it. Pontius Pilate reluctantly carries out the crucifixion, but you're quite right. The Torah does explicitly bless Israel, and whoever blesses Israel will be blessed. You quoted Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. You can see Numbers chapter 24. Over and over, the Tanakh is clear that the Jewish people are a unique nation. We're called chosen, but chosen does not mean we won the lottery or we get enslaved the world. Chosen here means we are set aside as a people who are called upon to be a light to the nations, who would suffer greatly in our exile. It's not like we're chosen, like Reformed theology thinks that people who believe in Jesus are just chosen by God. It's not that at all. So the church from the get-go was viciously anti-Jewish. In fact, you mentioned the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and I was surprised that you did that. That was extremely insightful. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was invented in the very early 20th century by Nikolai II's operators, portrays the Jews as essentially controlling the world, that all the leaders of the world are puppets and the Jews are in control through disproportionately controlling power. And you hear that kind of echo from Tucker, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But replacement theology says the following, that the Jews, while they were chosen, because they not only killed Jesus, rejected him and conspired against him and lied about him, they are no longer the chosen people, and the church are the heirs to the blessings originally given to the Jews. But it's much more vicious than that. That's what would be called soft supersessionism. That is not the supersessionism of Tucker and of Nick Fuentes and of Candace. The hard supersessionism is that of Augustine, that of John Chrysostom, and I want the viewer to understand this. In the view of Augustine, who is a prolific writer, a virulent anti-Semite, just something beyond your imagination. If Augustine wrote what he wrote in Austria or Canada, he'd be thrown in prison. Much worse than what Nick Fuentes says about Jews. But Augustine, in his magnum opus, The City of God, and in other writings, he addresses the question of why are the Jews still here if they're no longer chosen, if they don't have the blessing? Why are the Jews still around? The blessing, after all, is that we're an eternal nation. So the question that came to him was numerous that he addresses in this apologetic work. But the key, what we're curious about, is his view of the Jews. And he said the reason why the Jews are still here is they're here as a witness people, and they're here to testify to what happens to people that not only reject Jesus, but kill him. They are destined to live in a degraded state, protected by the church, but they must be seen by the world. This is what happens to people that reject Jesus, conspire against him, lyingly. It's not that the Jews in the church's view misunderstood it. It was malevolent. The Jews concocted spurious claims against Jesus and made sure that he was killed. And therefore, the Jews must live in a degraded state. It's Augustine's view. It's Chrysostom's view. That was the view of, it continues to be the view of the Orthodox Church and would continue to be the view of the Roman Catholic Church. And I want to bring us to our time. Three very critical events occur. In 1802, there was a man in England born. His name is John Nelson Darby. He was a theologian. He came to the United States with an incredible proposal. His idea was that everything the church had taught about replacement theology was wrong, and that the Jews are chosen, the blessing still belonged to the Jews. It doesn't mean Jews are going to heaven, but Jews have an earthly covenant with God, and Israel belongs to the Jews. The United States had a very favorable view of Jewish people. The founding fathers, whether it was Hamilton or George Washington, not only had a favorable view of Jews. Hamilton spoke Hebrew, he went to Hebrew school in Nevis, and they also despised the Church of England. They hated George III, for obvious reasons. And therefore, this idea that the Jews are special and chosen, Israel belongs to Jews, spread like wildfire because of lawmakers like Cyrus Schofield of Kansas and Moody and many others. And the idea of Christian Zionism explodes in the U.S. This could have never happened in Europe, never happened anywhere else. So therefore, Christian Zionism is so huge in the United States. It's the largest voting bloc in America. Estimates are 1 out of 5 Americans is a Christian Zionist. It's huge. Event number 2. In an auspicious day, January 25th, 1905, Theodore Herzl gains an audience with Pope Pius X. It was a fool's errand, but Herzl made a case for the Pope that you please recognize the Jewish state. Pius X said to him, if you don't recognize our Lord and Savior, we're not recognizing your state. It was a mistake for you not to convert to Christianity. We can't stop you from coming to Israel, but if you Jews show up in Palestine, our priests will be waiting there to baptize you. This is very, very critical. So he is a anti-modernist, highly traditionalist pope, and he sets the stage for the famed Pope Pius XII. This is not an accident. Pius XII was Hitler's pope. He reigned for 19 years and collaborated with the Nazis. He was the one who shaped the Concordat, the diplomatic relations between the Third Reich and the Vatican. The Vatican did not recognize Israel and would not until 1993 for reasons that are not germane to our conversation. I don't need to explain to you what happened to Rome's Jews. They were carried away on October 16th, 1943. Only 16 survived right under the nose of Pius XII. The scandal is beyond this. Pius XII issued memos that no Jewish child that was given to a Christian family that was baptized should be returned back to the family. He had an office set aside for hiding Nazis and giving them new identities in South America. It's just a nightmare. The point is that by the time Pius XII dies in October 9th, 1958, the church had a scandal on its hands, and it brought in a very interesting man. His name was John the 23rd. He's also known as the Good Pope. He was a genuine Philo-Semite. The Catholic Church is very good at, when they have a scandal, bringing a new fat guy from Argentina. I didn't mean that disparagingly. They're just bringing this nice face on the church, and then you get rid of the scandals of the past. And they brought into the 23rd, who was very pro-Jewish. He saved many Jews during the Holocaust. He launches the Second Vatican Council. The document that everyone knows about it because it's most provocative, is Nostra Atete in our time. The fourth chapter, the Jews are exonerated. The Jews of today are exonerated for killing Jesus. And in fact, the Jews are our elder brother. It's very positive. It doesn't undo replacement theology, but this does change the view of mainstream Roman Catholics about Jews. That's why you can have Catholic people like Marco Rubio and Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich. They're all Catholics. They all love Israel. Okay. However, there is the Candace Owens version. Right. Which is a nightmare. Candace Owens, when she got married to John Farmer, belonged to Reformed theology. She is no theologian. She's an incredible communicator. She's one of America's best at speaking. Her platform is enormous, and she was close to Dennis Prager, and she was very pro-Israel. But there were many problems. I'm not going into them because my role as a theologian, you want to know about her relationship with Kanye West, who's unfortunately mentally ill. The man suffers from bipolar. It's a terrible, terrible thing, but he was very, very important to her. He was a virulent anti-Semite. And what happens is that she went from Reformed theology to the theology of her husband, John Farmer.
Is it John or George Farmer? Not that it matters, but...
Oh, excuse me, George Farmer. Thank you. George Farmer. So George Farmer is raised by his father, Michael, in the Anglican Communion. Michael Farmer, his father, is a conservative Anglican. I don't want to get into this, but the Anglican Church is divided in that the conservative end is very pro-Israel, the liberal end is generally fairly anti-Israel. So the point is, Michael Farmer, who is a very is part of the elite. I believe he's a lord in England. I mean, these are an aristocratic family. But what happens is that George leaves the Anglican Communion. He not just converts to Catholicism, but he converts to what's called a radical traditional iteration of Roman Catholicism that specifically rejects the Second Vatican Council. Now, I'm not going to take the time. I'm going to name just organizations. There are a lot to us. If you're not Catholic, it doesn't matter. But you have Sedevacantists. They don't accept any pope after Pius XII. SSPX, the Society of St. Pius X. You can understand why Pius X is a hero to these people. The Remnant, that's Michael Matt's group. This is CIC. This is the Christian Identity Conference. They hate Israel. They hate the Second Vatican Council. This is not Megyn Kelly. This is not people who are, I don't take this personally. It's not like Kamala Harris, who didn't really have a strong support for Israel. Whether you like or don't, it's not that. It's not that at all. These guys hate Israel because, and this is very critical, because all the church fathers said with one voice, the Jews are accursed, the Jews are rejected by God, the Jews lost the covenant, and most importantly, they will never return to the land of Israel, never have sovereignty over Israel, and Jerusalem will never belong to them. And that's why the Vatican did not recognize the state of Israel. In fact, in 1947, they did everything possible to prevent the 33-13 vote. The Vatican was working very hard against it. Ultimately, it didn't work, and the vote went in the proper direction. But the key is that because of there are many factors here. There are people who I believe acted irresponsibly with her, but whatever it was, she joins George Farmer's iteration of Roman Catholicism. the key of all these groups, SSPX, CIC, all these groups are that they oppose Second Vatican Council. They oppose Nostra Aetate. They oppose Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. Because you need to understand that John Chrysostom, 4th, 5th century church father, Archbishop of Constantinople, you don't know the magnitude of his If you read it, you really would be surprised. The only thing akin to it is Luther. Luther was a crazed anti-Semite, crazy. It just, in fact, when Streicher at Nuremberg, when he was defending himself, he said, "There's nothing that I had said in Der Stürmer that Luther had not said prior to him," and he was being fairly accurate. So Candace joins not just Roman Catholicism, but it is specifically this virulent anti-Semitic iteration of Roman Catholicism. And unfortunately, there were many other dumb things that she said and she should have walked it back when she was talking about isolationism and things about Hitler. She should have said, "I made a mistake." But that was not, I don't have to explain all that. Right. So that's what we're looking at now. And now you mentioned Charlie Kirk. That was a nightmare. Charlie Kirk was a dispensationalist. That means he held hard and fast to the teachings of Darby and all this. But I want to say this about him, God rest his soul. He was more than other dispensationalists in that he defended not only Israel, but he defended the Jews, he even defended the Talmud. And it sounds like you really follow this. I have never, and I have given Mike Huckabee tours of Israel by helicopter, and he's a great guy. But Charlie was just off the charts great.
If he was I think he could have been in Rosh Hashiva. I mean, I would watch him on video, and he would just rattle off things like, whoa.
Yeah, Charlie, no doubt. I retract no doubt. I believe when Charlie was alive that within 10 years he'd be president of the United States. His kind of grit, his intellect, his communication skills, there is no one else like him. And there'll be other people that'll, just like this, Trump is unique, and there's not going to be another Charlie Combs. So right now, I'm going to say what everyone knows: the Turning Point USA is the most important organization in the conservative voice in the Republican Party, and there is a war going on for his legacy. Trump is not going to change. Trump was always pro-Jewish, always pro-Israel, and his father, Robert of blessed memory, was the same. It's just the way the family is. However, everybody is looking at 2028. Who is going to take over? Who is going to be the heir? And I'm not going to pretend to know that, to know the answer to that question, but that's what's happening now. Tucker Carlson despises Israel. He openly says that he hates Christian Zionists. He tried to walk it back, but that didn't come out of anywhere. His interview, and I'm glad you raised it, with that psycho, I'm going to say, that psycho priest from Bethlehem. You have to understand how disgusting that interview was. Forget about that it was a softball puff interview. If you just looked at Bethlehem, for those who don't understand this, I can walk to Bethlehem. It's very close to Jerusalem. Bethlehem, however, is under Area A, which means it's under the control of the Palestinian Authority. I mean, Israel has the general military, but it's on the streets. It's Palestinian Authority. The point is that 50 years ago, some 80% of the population of Bethlehem, which is holy, not just to Jews, but to Christians. It's very important because Christians have a tradition that Jesus was born there, according to Matthew and Luke. The key point is today it's about 5% Christian. The Christians are all gone. They had to flee. And Muslims have essentially taken over that city. And Tucker, who espouses, "Oh, I'm such a Christian, I'm so Christ, right? He could kill us because his guiding principle is his, there's a saying about European Christians. You know that in Europe, especially Western Europe, Christianity is falling and so on. But there's a saying that the Europeans will say, I don't believe in Jesus, but I know you killed him. That's what Tucker is about. So Tucker even admitted that he rarely goes to church. He's technically an Episcopalian, which is essentially the Church of England. He's just read the Bible, he says, last year, which is absolutely mind-blowing. But he is part of an isolationist. Pat Buchanan was a virulent anti-Semite.
Right.
Exactly in that, and he is simply weaponizing all of this material, interviewing Stephanopoulos' sister, who's a nun, a vicious anti-Semite, violently pro-Palestinian, a complete liar. And what I want your viewers to understand, that Nazareth, just as an example, is a city in area part of Israel within the Green Line. And that city is growing. The Christian population is growing and flourishing, and no one will harm them because Israel is protecting Christians. Conversely, in areas like Bethlehem, which are very holy to Christians, the Christian community is vanishing, and the only people that can stay there are these kind of folks who are lying and are speaking in behalf of the Palestinian Authority in order so that the wrath doesn't come down on them. And that's who Tucker chose.
So I'm going to give you, because you mentioned a number of names. So we spoke about Candace Owens, and she got so carried away with herself that she's just imploding. When you had Nick Fuentes calling her a low IQ anti-Semite because she accused Israel of being behind Charlie Kirk's assassination, and now you got Alex Jones, another whack job, saying he wants to go to war with her. So she's employing, and she's just really, really insane with her hatred. Tucker Carlson is much more mild-mannered.
Yes.
I just watched him do an interview with Judge Anthony Napolitano, who used to be a Fox News legal analyst, and now again Israel's committing genocide. And I just watched it literally 20 minutes before we got on the air here, where he lied. He quoted Mike Huckabee as saying that God will destroy America if America doesn't support Bibi Netanyahu. Now, of course, Michael Huckabee never said that. He made references to America's moral decline is certainly tied to our support for Israel. But to say it the way Tucker says it, and then this stuff gets repeated. You see, the stuff on the left, it's the Marxists. They hate America. They hate Israel. Jews are part of the ruling class. There's no religious content to it. So it's political and it's ideological. When you start invoking religion into it, now you make it more dangerous because you've got a lot of people out there who are Christian. And from what I've read, there are over 45,000 different types of, I read that in Beryl Wine's book, about 45,000 denominations or variations of Christianity. And it's very easy to pick and choose a quote from any one of the 1,000 books in Sfarm about us to make their point, which is exactly what Tucker Carlson does. Now, I'm going to read you a quote because he's talking about Israel again. He says, and you see elaborate arguments on behalf of doing so or ignoring it. He says that, I'm trying to find it here. Oh, I apologize. He said that he sees Christian ministers who are saying that, that God is on the side of Israel. And Tucker says that God is not on any country's side. God has no affiliation. Okay, so God has no political affiliation. I have no problem with that. I agree with that. But he quotes the New Testament where it says, we are not as Christians allowed to kill the innocent. So then he goes on and he says, if a man commits a crime, do we kill his kids? I don't care if it's in Minneapolis or Gaza City. No, we don't. So what he's doing is he's saying that it's Christian doctrine that the Jews are violating by justifying killing kids in Gaza, as if that's Israeli policy. And I have heard Tucker quote Bibi saying that the kids in Gaza deserve to be killed because of their DNA. They're born in Gaza, they're Gazans, they're Palestinians, and they're going to grow up to be terrorists. So he lies about what is in the New Testament. He makes himself out to be this wonderful Christian because we don't kill innocent people, and he attributes these to either the Jews or to the Christian Zionists. And this is why, to me, I see him as being so dangerous.
You nailed it. I want to unpack this for the viewers so they understand very carefully. Candace Owens, first of all, if you're watching this, I hope you reconsider. I was so proud. I want to just talk to Candace for a moment. I remember when you had your first child and you had a little necklace in Hebrew that said Ima, and I was so proud of you. And I hope you find your way. But that said, that's from my heart. That said, she's going to self-destruct if she continues her way because she's not uh, well rooted in. She's just not there. If people don't change overnight the way that she did, but she's not dangerous in a sense that she's going to implode. She's going to self-destruct. You really nailed it on Tucker Carlson. He is the danger. Of all the people you're going to mention, he's the most dangerous because he brings enormous amount of credibility. A quarter of a century with Fox News. Fox News fired him, and I know people at Fox News, and I asked them, why'd you do that? You unleashed hell. And they said, I did. I told people who work at Fox, who I know, and they said, you have no idea how toxic he was. You have no idea. So, all right, no idea, no idea. The key is Tucker's the guy to watch because he has enormous communication skills and he knows how to walk it to the line and just play with that line. What happens with Candace and what happened when she accused Israel of assassinating Tucker Carlson, so she actually embarrassed all the anti-Semites. She embarrassed Dave Smith. She embarrassed Nick Fuentes because they go, holy smokes, stop saying that because you're making us look bad because they're going to think that we agree with you. So she is so batty that what's happened is that Fuentes came out and Dave Smith came out condemning her and saying, where's your evidence for that? So she is not the dangerous person here. She is a highly mercurial, temperamental person who's a grifter. And unfortunately, Megyn Kelly, I don't think she has a strong guiding principle here. I don't know her personally. I don't know her theology personally. I don't know, but she seems like the person who is watching very carefully where her career is going. I also asked the guys at Fox, what was the deal with Megyn Kelly? They said she was the queen of Fox. She made a lot of money, but she was absolutely toxic in Fox. I don't know if it's correct. That's what I get. It's unfortunate. The key person to watch is Tucker. Another reason is not only is Tucker moderated, and what he does is he doesn't necessarily only say these things. He interviews people without pushing back, like Holocaust deniers, insane people, and just Nick Fuentes can say, I'm a fan of Stalin. He said, let's pin that. Stalin murdered approximately 30 million people during his lifetime. Stalin did not defeat the Soviets did not defeat the Nazis because of Stalin. They defeated them in spite of Stalin. If Stalin had not died on March 5th, 1953, if he would only have lived 6 months longer or a year longer, many historians believe that all of Soviet Jewry would have been wiped out. He was set to kill all the Jews of the Soviet Union, beginning with the doctors. He died exactly at the moment. If he would have lived another moment, and there were people that said the Jews did it. It's mind-blowing. But he dies in his office. No one was allowed to enter his office. That was Stalin's deal, so they left and no one could stand there to help him. So the key point is that Tucker is very dangerous. Another reason is Tucker has very, very close relatives that work with J.D. Vance as a senior advisor. This is extremely dangerous. And therefore, Trump has to be very careful as well in that you have a large umbrella of conservatives and you have to protect the party, the integrity of the party, and you can't divide the party. And therefore, you need to allow into your camp both the so-called isolationists, they're not really isolationists. They're using isolation. They really hate Israel. That's the guiding principle. I mean, if Trump look at Nigeria. There's a genocide there. 8,000 Christians are murdered. No one cares. No one cares. And if Trump says he's going to Nigeria, They say two words and that's the end of it. They're isolationists, like Buchanan was with regard to Israel, because Buchanan was a virulent, vicious anti-Semite. So unbelievable. I mean, we don't have to go into it over here. But Tucker is the kind of guy who has the skills, and he has the connections to the White House, and he has the connections to Trump that make him extremely dangerous in 2028. And I'll just say this. If you're watching Bibi now, you are watching a man who is saying Israel has to be militarily independent within 3 years. That's nonstop. He understands that we don't know what's going to happen. You and I both know that Americans have a short memory, and what happens at the polls in 28 is going to be based on what does the economy look like in the months leading up to 28. That's what's going to decide it. But Israel, on the other hand, has to be prepared for any outcome. We don't, and none of us are going to pretend to know what that is, but people. This is why Tucker is the most dangerous person in the whole lot.
See, it's funny that because I'm just watching myself now and other Jewish activists. I think that Jewish activists and Jewish groups in America, I think that we dropped the ball a long time ago. I think we put all of our faith in the groups like the ADL. We put all our hopes and everything in AIPAC. Like AIPAC was going to always protect Israel. And now, of course, AIPAC is, J Street undermined AIPAC. No one took J Street seriously. I warned them. Do not ignore them. Now J Street owns the Democratic Party. AIPAC is getting attacked from every which side, and we don't have anything left. And I fear that if we go after J.D. Vance, now then Turning Point USA is going to turn on us.
Yeah,
and then we're in big trouble.
That's correct. I owe my life to the Anti-Defamation League. They saved my life on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
And so I'm not in the habit of attacking organizations that.
I'll do it.
No, it's just, it's just the way it was. I mean, things where my life is threatened occasionally. And the ADL, A. Foxman, God bless him, whatever. I would, everyone wants to, including people in the ADL who I know, would like to see the ADL be less politically connected. Right. I think they have a great mandate, and we all hope. I hope to get better, and I hope the ADL grows more. You brought up Judge Napolitano. I never heard anyone do that.
Yeah.
So Judge Napolitano is part of that group of anti-Second Vatican Council. These are the people who are viciously hate Nosra Atete. He's a vicious hater of Israel. And it's very hard for you and I to comprehend because, we used to watch Fox News, watch him, and he was one of the most reasoned, seasoned, thoughtful, sober mind. And it's just hard to put it together with just complete, absolute nonsense coming out, conflating Israel with Bibi Netanyahu. Now, Bibi Netanyahu is held office for the longest time, but Israel has a vivacious democracy, and in a sense, even more so than the United States in that, whereas an American president is elected, he is very unlikely to leave office prematurely before the end of his term. In Israel, it could be a no confidence vote and the prime minister is brought down and we start all over again. So it's much more precarious. But conflating Bibi Netanyahu with the state of Israel, he is popular here. There are a lot of questions that to be asked, of course. But Napolitano, who left Fox News unceremoniously, that's all I'm going to say, because it's not germane to our thing. I wish him well in life. But he is a rad trad, which is a radical traditionalist. I want to just one thing say, because I want this to be known. There are Roman Catholics who are very fine people who are very pro. So this we know, we said that. There are Roman Catholics who cherish the Latin pre-Vatican II Mass. They do. And I know a lot of them, and they're very pro-Israel. So I have to be very careful with this, and that is there are people, you know them, I know them, you may not realize it, but they cherish the old Latin Mass that they date back 1,000 years. I think it's going too far back. Whatever, they enjoy that rather than the new Mass that emerges out after Second Vatican Council. But Napolitano is completely in the camp of the anti-Second Vatican Council, viciously anti-Semitic, viciously anti-Israel. But I want to say the crazy thing to you. This is going to be nuts, but you'll agree with me. It's as much as we dislike anti-Semites, in a way, you have to feel sorry for them, meaning, this is tongue-in-cheek, it's not easy to be an anti-Semite today because it's socially not acceptable to hate Jews or hate blacks or other, but especially. So you have to always couch your anti-Semitism by being anti-Israel, because being anti-Israel and then saying it's just Bibi Netanyahu, it's not even Israel.
Right.
So then you can that deflects from the charge of anti-Semitism, which socially is not acceptable unless you have a pillowcase over your head, right? And
See, the left will say that they're anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic, but the right,
yeah,
not Tucker Carlson, he's smarter than that. But I go on
yes,
social media, it's the Jews. And
yes,
again,
yes,
they cite the Talmud. It's funny, I do daf yomi for our non-Jewish friends. It means I spend about an hour a day learning the Talmud. And I'm still looking for that portion about where they talk about Yashka. But again, though, everything is taken out. This is stuff that was written over 1,000 years ago. It was debates about, and so if they have to go back 1,000 years to find a reason to hate on us, then they've got a problem.
I don't look to the New Testament to find pro-Jewish ideas. And I don't think Christians would want me to do that. And they should stop looking at the Talmud for pro-Christian ideas. But as it turns out, it's all nonsense. As it turns out, you and I, await the coming of Mashiach. The first prophet to talk about the Messiah ever in Tanakh was a
Right.
non-Jew, Bilam, in Numbers 24. That's our first messianic prophecy. Whereas the Exodus was the liberation of a single nation, the Jews from Egypt. The Messianic age, which we yearn for and pray for three
Right.
times a day, is about the redemption of the world. It's about the non-Jews coming to the Jews and say, teach us more about God, because now we know that God is with you, Zechariah 8:23. It's about the nations coming to Jerusalem and praying together, Isaiah 56. It's about unity. It's about all people are created in the image of God. I want to say this to the Christians, by the way. I want you to listen very carefully. It's you Christians, don't take this in a bad way, but it's you Christians that think that God is Jewish. We don't think that. Okay? So we don't think God is Jewish. You do. And I know that sounds a little, but just remember this. Every person is created in the image of God. And we don't believe that people who are not Jewish are going to hell or
Right.
don't have an afterlife. The righteous of all the nations of the world have a place in the world to come. I am not trying to attack any other religion,
Right.
but Christianity and Islam, it's not an attack. But it happens to be, as a matter of fact, that in Christianity, unless you're part of Christianity, you're going to hell. Unless you're part of Islam,
Right.
most Muslims believe you go to. Judaism is the universal faith in the world for all people. Every person is created in the image of God.
Right.
There is no place more hostile to anti-Gentile than the Talmud, which only speaks about the sins of lying to non-Jews and the sins that are committed against non-Jews. It's just exactly the opposite. That's what's really happening
Which
here.
Rabbi Rose spoke about in one of his responses to Candace Owens, because she said that according to the Talmud, it's okay to lie to non-Jews and stuff like that, and he came right out and said it says the exact opposite. So, but that's another conversation. Um,
It's not
Rabbi
even
Singer,
permitted. It's not even permitted to lie to an idol worshiper.
right,
It's the Talmud openly says that
right,
straightforwardly, but it's a game and it's fake. That's
right.
what it really is. But continue, please.
No, listen, I guess I want to say that this is a very important topic.
Yes.
Personally, again, as someone who lives in America, 10 years ago, I never would have believed that we
No.
are where we are today. And it scares the hell out of me.
Right.
And again, I don't know what's going to be in a few years from now. Um, my kids don't see it, because they weren't around in the 80s and the 90s
Right.
when Jews were safe here. Um, and all we can do is just keep fighting. And again, we're overwhelmed because we're outnumbered. We're outnumbered on the left. You've got 2 billion Muslims. Even if half of them, that's 1 billion people. there are 15 million Jews. Half of us don't care about Israel. So we're vastly outnumbered. We're vastly outmaneuvered. And then now, again, we have Christian friends. I interviewed Lori Cardoza Moore last month. She's great. John Hagee. I love these people, but I think that, I mean, if you were to ask me, like, what do I want? I want them to come out more forcefully. They don't want, see, they won't fight into the weeds the way our enemies do. But I don't know what the other tactic is going to be.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, and you remember that I told you this. Our enemies, it's going to be bloody, but our enemies always save us from ourselves, always. I mean, I could take the most visceral cases. Let's take you and I. We don't know each other,
Right.
but I could say with complete confidence that the anti-Semitism we're observing today, we have never witnessed or imagined in our lives. And what happened on October 7th is something beyond comprehension. Kristallnacht, 92 Jews were killed. Kishinev pogroms, 49 Jews were killed. 1,200 Jews murdered, 251 taken out. But just understand, there's a saying at every bris, we say it at the Seder table, B'domayich chayi, we live by our blood. And just think, I want to share this with you. So imagine, remember, there was no October 7th. So Iran is heading for a nuclear weapon. They want to be able to put it on a warhead, and they're really, really close. What happens as a result of October 7th is that Hamas is not destroyed, but eviscerated. Syria collapses, Hezbollah shattered and destroyed, the Houthis not destroyed but eviscerated, and Iran's nuclear program destroyed. Now they're trying to rebuild it again. So just understand this. I will tell you this. We have a covenant with God. It does not mean that we don't have to do what we need to do. Of course we do. But understand that ultimately our enemies will launch a trigger that will ultimately save us. And throughout our history, always the enemy's response, like what would have happened if the Arab world would have accepted the partition plan? The situation might be virtually all historians believe that state of Israel wouldn't be alive today had they not gone to war when Israel proclaimed the state of Israel. It's very counterintuitive,
Right.
but Hashem, just understand this. I could speak to the spiritual. I lived in Indonesia, the largest Muslim country, for 5 years, where I served as rabbi. I never experienced
I read
anti-Semitism.
that.
Yeah. I never experienced anti-Semitism. They treated me really very beautifully. But one of the things about Indonesia, and where I live is almost on the equator, is that routinely, and I would say every couple of weeks, there was an earthquake. Not crazy earthquake, but enough to, the chandelier is moving. There were volcano eruptions and mudslides routinely. That whole area is called the Ring of Fire, and people really do live on a knife's edge in that region of the world. That's where the tsunami of December 26, 2004 occurred off Sumatra. It's on a knife's edge. I pose this to you, my dear friend, that Jews, typically, we do not suffer from natural disasters. We suffer from the non-Jews who turn against us. Our role is to be a light to the nations. That's our role. And what happens is when we fail, meaning we're not doing our uttermost to be a light to nations, the nations of the world, in turn, don't get the light from us, and that's our mandate. Conversely, the Tucker Carlsons, are really going to war with God. Now, they may frame it as they're doing it in the name of religion, but we all know Tucker. He says, I don't go to church, and he just read He's not a kid. He never read the Bible in his life. That's insane.
Right.
So obviously, but what's happening is our job as Jews is, of course, hishtadlus. We have to do what is necessary. Israel has to be militarily independent. Vivek Ramaswamy, God bless him, who was a
Yeah.
candidate in the Republican Party, he nailed it, and everyone misunderstood him. He's an isolationist. He said Israel
Yeah.
should be weaning off of American help. Israel should just be supplied with the veto umbrella in the Security
Yeah.
Council. That's where Israel's vulnerable, incidentally, is the Security Council.
Yeah.
Because we can't rotate in, and that's the
Right.
problem. It's not Israel. Israel's economy is very, very strong. It's very robust. But he was saying this is not good for Israel because what's going to happen is Washington is going to be dictating, Israel policy, which is, we have a friend. It's true. But Trump is a philo-Semite, very unique person. There were a few people like that in Israel, but no, there was no Trump. LBJ was a philo-Semite for reasons beyond the scope of this, but there were not many
Okay.
of them. There were not many. Trump genuinely, but he has 3 years left,
Right.
and therefore I assure you this, and remember that I said this on your show, that ultimately these people who now are very disconcerting, these people are going to save us. They are going to say, Tucker Carlson is going to save Israel. Nick Fuentes is going to save Israel. Candace Owens is going to save Israel. You'll see how this will work out.
I'm
And
going
this
to
is
put that
vital
quote
for us.
in this
Yes,
story. When I do the interview, we're going to put it on Vin News.
yes.
I'm going to put those quotes out in bold font.
Right, right. Now,
Okay.
and Mike Huckabee is a real mensch.
Yep.
He does believe he's a Southern Baptist ordained minister,
Yep.
14th governor of Arkansas. He does believe that America was blessed because it blesses Israel.
Yep.
Truman was the first head of state to recognize the Jewish state, even though
Yep.
he invited Ben Gurion not to do it. When he did it, he did it. So it is the view of the Christian Zionists that God blesses countries that bless Israel.
Right.
So he believes that. It has nothing to do with Bibi. That whole
Yeah.
thing, it's so
Exactly.
hard. Napolitano is lying. He's conflating Bibi with the Jewish state, with the Zionism, with the hope of a state where the Jews could live in peace. And in fact, as it turns out, heads of state, Reagan's Secretary of State, all viewed Israel as vital to American security. I
Yeah.
never met a Zionist in my life that did not thoroughly believe that Israel is protecting America from hostile forces in the East. We all know that.
Look, you saw it with when Israel went into Iran a few months ago, that they were able to get in there, and they did it without any detection from from Iran's radar system, and that sent a message to all of their enemies. It happened when
Eh,
Israel went to war in Lebanon, I think 1980, when American-made jets downed all of Syria's MiGs. That sent a message. So yeah, they get a lot from us, from
The
Israel. I'm
CIA,
sorry.
the CIA desperately during the Vietnam War desperately needed to know how a MiG-21 works, okay?
Yeah.
And they did not know. What did Israel do? It was able to capture a MiG-21 by getting
I read
uh,
that.
an Iraqi
Yep.
pilot flew it here into Big Aaron Airport. Israel took care of him,
Yep.
snuck his family out, and this took the MiG-21, handed it over to the CIA. They reverse engineered it, and that saved the lives of tens of thousands of American soldiers fighting in
Yep.
Southeast Asia. The T-72, Israel hands it over. The key point is Israel and America have a bilateral relationship. We are very grateful to America, but Americans see Israel as a vital strategic ally in protecting American interests.
Right.
And this is a marriage made in heaven. No one's using anybody. Now there are, and I'm not going to get involved because it's beyond the scope. Israel gives a lot of aid to a lot of other countries, doesn't seem to bother Tucker Carlson. And those
Right.
countries provide America with nothing. So, as it turns out, this is a bilateral relationship between, in technologically and so on. God bless America. God bless Israel. And may we see the coming of the true Messiah quickly in our time. Thank you for having me on.
Amen. Rabbi Singer, an honor and a pleasure to have you, and I look forward to meeting you in America.
Amen.